Hey everybody, welcome back to a special edition of the GOAZCATS.com football show. We usually have a preview show this week. Obviously no game to get ready for quite a while, for several months, but the early signing period has come and gone. Arizona signed 26 players or announced 26 players on early signing day. There's still some potential for some additions to the class later on, but the next signing period won't be until February. But for now, Arizona signs 26 players. This is senior editor Matt Moreno, joined by Troy Hutchison of GOAZCATS.com, staff writer, to talk about it all. Obviously, Jedd Fisch and what he likes to do is, do a lot of the work over the course of the summer, maybe a little bit, over the course of the season, but he likes to have most of his work done by the time the team gets ready to hit the field for training camp. Again, brunt of the work was finished and completed for the 2023 class over the course of the summer. Arizona, an interesting class, a different class, Troy, than last year. I think maybe some fans expected that what they saw last year was going to be the norm. I think that was very much, I wouldn't say it's an anomaly, but there was a reason it was so rare. It took a lot of work to get that class to come together. You cap it off by adding somebody like T-Mac, who's a 5-star prospect. And so it's just going to look different for Arizona in this class. Rivals doesn't take transfers into account, but Arizona still adds a 5-star player at the end of the cycle with a transfer, Justin Flowe, one of the top ranked transfer players, was one of the top prospects coming out of high school a few years ago. A very talented player who Jedd Fisch talked about last week. Let's just get your overall thoughts on the class. I know you've watched film on all these guys, Troy. We've now heard from Jedd Fisch. And what he had to say about this class, but what's your overall take on this group? And what are your thoughts just on this class as a whole? Did they address the needs that needed to be addressed? And how did they do that?
Yeah, I think anytime a team kind of attacks defense in a recruiting class, it could be looked at as not as a great class, especially when you do it on the offensive line or defensive line, because those guys aren't usually highly ranked like the quarterbacks and the wide receivers and running backs of the world. But I think overall, up to down, this is a really good recruiting class for Arizona. I like it more than their ranking right now at 45. They have some talent on the offensive line. You go from Rhino to Elijah Payne to getting Raymond Polito. That's a great addition right there on the offensive line. Kylan Gonzalez, you don't know what you're going to get with him, but I like the size. And then you address the needs on the defensive side of the football. You added to your DB room, and then you added guys at the linebacker position that I think are a little bit under the radar. Right now, you had Big Jonah's brother in terms of Savanea. He looks really good on tape. So overall, I think it's a really good recruiting class. And then you add in the transfers as well. I think Jedd Fisch, what he set out to do was toughen his defense, and he definitely did it, because I think that's one of the biggest themes of this recruiting class is toughness.
Yeah, I mean, I would say you're saying pretty good. Or really good. I'm saying it was fine and probably even good or solid, I would say, before they added in the transfers. And even before, the end of the cycle, when they added someone like Raymond Polito, who I think is a very, very big addition to this class. Obviously, we're able to flip him from Alabama. It was solid. It was not a bad class. It was definitely a drop off from what they had before. But I think once you get to those final stages and you're able to add Raymond Polito to the mix, and an offensive lineman who could help and potentially help right away, who was committed to Alabama, I think that's an upgrade, over what they had previously. And I think when you couple that with Jordan Morgan coming back, which is huge, which is maybe their biggest, win of the offseason, or recruiting win of the offseason, to bring him back and convince him to return to school and finish out his career one more season. That's a big deal. But I think when you add in the transfers, I think to me, that's when it kind of pushes things over the top. Highlighted by Justin Flowe. I think you cannot overlook that. Yes, he's had some injury troubles that have maybe kept him off the field at times, but you have to think the talent is still there. Arizona believes the talent is still there. When he steps on campus, he's going to be the highest rated recruit that Arizona has on its roster. He was rated even higher than T-Mac. Just a pure talent. And if he can kind of rekindle some of that and what he showed as a high school prospect when pretty much every program across the country wanted him on their team, um, I think it's one of those things that's going to be very, beneficial for Arizona and give them, a player to build around as they move forward. But, Malachi Riley is another one that was kind of added on later in the class, is somebody that Arizona really wanted. And at that receiver position, really, liked throughout the course of the process. He took visits on back-to-back weekends early on in the spring. At that point, you kind of said, okay, I think he'll probably end up at Arizona, but it took a long time to get there. Eventually took an official visit to BYU. But, I think it's hard to argue with what they did offensively. A lot of your key players are going to be coming in on that side of the ball. You have Raymond Polito. You have Braden Dorman, the quarterback. Those are the top prospects in the class in terms of ratings and rankings, offensive guys. And so I don't think that's a shock when you see where their success was this last season under Jedd Fisch and what the mindset truly is of the program with a head coach like Jedd Fisch. It's all about offense. And when you look at the success they had with certain players, certain recruits, talk about a guy like T-Mac, Jacob Cowling, Dorian Singer, any of those players, it's all offense. So it's not a shock, I think, to see that they're better recruits and the recruits with the most promise are coming in on offense. It's only going to continue to build that side of the ball. But, maybe let's go look to the defensive side of the ball. I know you've paid attention to a lot of those recruits. There's some guys that have been talked about a lot that I think the staff really likes. Genesis Smith is part of that group, I think, as someone that the staff really likes and feels can be an impact player probably early on in his career as a taller safety, taller DB. Gavin Hunter is a recruit from Hawaii, another safety from Hawaii who I saw during the season. And I think he fits with what they're looking for in the back end and in the secondary. Has some different, some versatility, some different skills to his game, and somebody I think brings the right mindset. But who are some players on defense that stood out to you, and maybe are some guys that you think you're going to keep an eye on, as they start to arrive here in the next week or so, maybe a little over a week, and begin their careers, and then some of those other guys that get to Arizona in the summer. But who are maybe some guys you're going to be looking at on defense, or maybe some guys that stood out to you on this list of Arizona's class on defense?
Yeah, I think for me, the number one guy that kind of stood out in terms of three-star kid out of Oregon is Tristan Davis. When you look at his film, I mean, he plays like 6'7", 230. I know he is listed as a defensive end. I think he'll be that, maybe the strong defensive end, kind of like Jalen Harris was this year for the Wildcats in the future. But the dude just knows how to tackle. I think that's one of the biggest things that's hard to find nowadays in college football is when he goes and attacks the running back or quarterback behind the line of scrimmage, he's wrapping up full body, great form, and still hitting them with power. You see a lot of, I don't want to say half-ass tackling, but a lot of tackling that leaves you wondering, what are you doing? And he doesn't do that. I mean, just great tackling form, quick off the line, and has the frame to grow into his body. So I think he's a really good add for the Wildcats. Number two is Aaron Parrish out of Katy, Texas, the defensive back. He flies to the football. I think that's what really stood out about his film for me is just how vicious he was attacking the football and delivering a blow for his size. It's highly impressive. Maybe more of a nickel at Arizona. I don't know. That's where I see him at, but you can understand why the coaching staff likes him so much. And then lastly, I want to get to the name here because I don't want to mess it up because personally, he's my favorite player of the recruiting class is Kamila Kakaiu out of Hawaii. Two-star kid is going to go under the radar, but he is just a monster outside linebacker. I see him at the cap position for Arizona in the future, very much like Jacob Manu in terms of how hard he plays, downhill running, hard-nosed football, but he has the size. He's 6'2", 215, 225, somewhere around there. They're going to fill him out a little bit more. I think he's going to play a similar role to what Hunter Echols did in the future for Arizona. And that's somebody that, you look at why he flew under the radar. Maybe it's because he was playing out in Hawaii and nobody wants to go out there. But he might be the best defensive player of this class, in my opinion. I really like him a lot.
Camu. I think everyone's just going to
Um,
just call him Camu. It's just so much easier. They're going to get us with some of these Hawaiian names eventually as they
yeah.
continue to recruit the islands. But, um, one of the biggest things I think even before this class got going and even before they landed any commitments in this class, the talk from fans was, what are you going to do up front? You need offensive linemen. You look at this group, there's a lot of players that are leaving. Even the players that aren't leaving, or the players that were returning from last year's team weren't exactly the types of players that got fans excited. Um, they needed to address the offensive line. I think even from the first day they stepped foot on campus as a coaching staff, back in early 2021, the thought was you need to recruit some offensive linemen, not only for, this past season, but for beyond. And for 2023, that was always going to be, one of the main goals was offensive line, defensive line, linebacker. Those were kind of the three positions where you said they needed to quickly address those things. As you look at now, the offensive line class, which a lot of these guys played on both sides of the ball. Rhino being one of those guys that, probably could play defensive line in college if they really needed him to. Tylen Gonzalez, somebody who could probably play some defensive line if they needed him to. As you look at this offensive line class, now that it's what it is for now, what do you like about it, and what stands out to you about the group that they added along the offensive line? You have Elijah Payne, a high 3-star prospect, originally from Las Vegas, moved out to California to finish up his career against some good competition in Southern California. Obviously, Raymond Polito, kind of the big name of the group, somebody who potentially could kick inside with Jordan Morgan, returning. Maybe he's somebody that steps inside. I think I like him more as a guard. I watched quite a bit of him at different camps over the course of the spring and early summer. I don't know that he has the complete athleticism that you're looking for to play tackle. I think he has the length and the technique to play that position, but I think he just feels like a better fit at guard and gives you a 6'6" guard, which is not bad. So, I've seen him pull a lot, and I think he does have kind of the natural ability to, get out and when you're pulling a guard, I think he fits that. But I just really like his game. I think as an inside player as well. Rhino, I think we've talked about him quite a bit. I mean, just his aggressiveness and his approach to the game, I think is going to be really important for them. Reminds me a lot of Laith Freck, where you look at him and you go, man, if he can just add some weight, you kind of have everything there. You just need to add some weight to him. So I think that's going to be one of the things with him. And then obviously we mentioned Tylen Gonzalez. Am I missing any, Troy? I think that's it.
I think you got it all. And
but what do you think of that group that I just talked about? And did they address their needs to kind of meet, what you think they needed and what fans are going to think they needed as well?
I think they did. I mean, the offensive line is something that you always need to recruit every year in and year out. You don't have enough offensive linemen. I know Fisch said he wants to be at, I think the number was 14 to 15 scholarship offensive linemen on the roster, and I think the team is at 12 to 13. So they're right there. They're always going to be looking to add at that position. But what stands out to me is Raymond Polito, 6'6". Elijah Payne, 6'7". Then you have Tylen Gonzalez, 6'6", and Rhino, 6'5". Just the frame of these guys is what you want in an offensive lineman. I think Rhino actually is the smallest at 280, and that's a pretty good size for a high school offensive lineman. I believe Jordan Morgan came in around 267, 270 out of Marana, and look at how well he's developed for Arizona. But the athleticism, and then also the mean streak in these guys. And, that's something that Jedd Fisch has talked about in the past about recruiting offensive linemen. And he wants somebody that plays mean, somebody that plays tough. They got that in Jonas Ivanea last season, and it's worked out for them. And I think all these guys have that. For me, Elijah Payne has really vicious hands. His handwork is incredible. Needs to work on his footwork, but I think he'll get there. And I agree, Raymond Polito, I could see him playing guard. And that's going to be really good for the Wildcats, because Jedd mentioned it during the last couple press conferences of the regular season, is the plan for Jonas Ivanea is potentially the tackle position. So that might open up a spot for Raymond Polito to play right away, kind of what they did with Jonas Avenea last season, and then have Jonah at the right tackle position. And you shore up a lot on the offensive line. And then you get some of these guys time to develop and compete for that second spot. Because right now, last season, when you look at Arizona's offensive line, the starting group was really solid. But then after that, there's a big drop off and they just didn't have a lot of bodies there. Now they have guys that can compete with those guys and potentially be those second string offensive linemen.
Maybe sticking on the offensive side of the ball. We haven't really dived into too much in the skill position guys. Obviously there was a weird kind of strange situation there with Tresh Kekahuna where you think he's coming. The belief is he's coming, and then he just ends up signing with Wisconsin, where he was originally committed, way back in the summer. So kind of a strange situation there. But like I mentioned, Malachi Riley, they end up signing him, somebody that I think the staff really, wanted and identified early as somebody they really wanted. Carlos Wilson, they flipped from Utah. Maybe we'll stick with just the receivers now before we get to the tight end group. But Jackson Holman, who could be potentially play a couple different positions for Arizona. It wasn't a position where you said they have to get guys. Obviously, losing Dorian Singer hurts, but we've talked about on this show, how much we like Kevin Green and how much we like some of these other players that are on the team. And so, what do you think of the receiver group and what they were able to do? Did they kind of address any needs that they had? I mean, is it a good group to kind of give them some time to develop and not have to play right away? What do you think of the receiver group overall?
Yeah, I think it's the perfect group for the situation that Arizona's in. And that is Arizona has probably the most talent at receiver in the Pac-12 and one of the most talented groups in the country. And Kevin Green, I think, is going to step right in there and be that for Arizona. So you look at this receiving group in this recruiting class, it's a lot of guys that need a little bit of time to develop. And Malachi Riley might be a guy that could start for some programs. But even he needs a little work on his game, but you could see the talents there. And just letting Coach Cummings get his hands on these kids and develop them. I mean, I think that's going to pay dividends for Arizona. You've seen it work with Dorian Singer, Jacob Cowing, T-Mac, Kevin Green at times. So give them time to work with these guys and develop them. I think you're going to see a lot of good football out of them. Obviously, losing Tresh hurts. I do think he was the best receiver of the class for Arizona. But again, would you rather have Raymond Polito or Tresh? I think the answer is clearly Raymond Polito. And so you have to love the recruiting win there.
Obviously it's a smaller, you didn't need another running back necessarily, but I think they always want to try and add one. But Brennan Johnson could be a sneaky, very, very good pickup for Arizona. He plays out in the high desert in California. Kind of similar to Raymond Polito, where just difficult to get to. You're not, you have a point to where you have to go. When you head out that way, I mean, you're going because you want to see, Brandon Johnson play or Raymond Polito play. You're not just happen to be in that area. It's way out there. And so, someone like him, I think probably could have, been a different type of recruit if he's playing, more in Orange County, LA, has those types of games and is able to play against that competition and be seen like those players. But a really hard worker. I think anything you hear about him is just that he's a really, really hard worker. It was interesting when he committed, kind of did some research on him and just tried to find some videos and stuff. And right before he committed, he had posted, a clip of him working out, and it was essentially in dirt. It was wherever he could get a workout in, that's where he was going to get a workout in. And so I think they're getting someone with the right mindset. And I really like his game. I saw him. He was at the Elite 11 as one of the players. Elite 11 is a quarterback event, but they have obviously different positions to have the quarterbacks throw the ball to. And he looked really good. I mean, I was able to watch him for a little bit, and he looked really good in that setting. So I think he's going to be another player that adds to this group. Running back group at Arizona, it feels like it's no matter what year you pick, it's going to be a deep group. And that's going to be the case once again with Michael Wiley returning, some of the other pieces they have on board. So maybe, a healthy, speedy Luke for an entire season. It's an impressive group, and obviously, Jonah Coleman as well. So he's someone I just wanted to mention. But to wrap up, I mean, as you look forward now, obviously, the big name that's still out there for Arizona is Leviticus Sua, a 4-star linebacker from Mater Dei High School out in Orange County, has, been one of either the top program or one of the, top 2 or 3 programs in the country over the last few years. Leviticus Sua is a multi-year starter at middle linebacker for that team. Kind of everything Arizona wants and needs right now. It's down to Arizona, UCLA, Stanford as well in the picture. Maybe somebody else sneaks in, but I think it's going to be eventually his pick will come from one of those 3 schools. Arizona in a great position to land Leviticus Sua. He'll decide on January 20th at the Polynesian Bowl. How necessary is it to land someone like Leviticus Sua in your mind? Obviously, Justin Flowe comes in. You expect that he's going to step in right away and have a chance to take over and or at least split duties with Jerry Roberts, or however that's going to work out. But when you look at someone like Leviticus Sua, I'm thinking future with him, and kind of you look at his game and you go and look at his situation and what Arizona has right now, and you go, he can step in, maybe develop for a year, maybe he gets on the field a little bit, but he'll have some time to develop, and then he'll be ready to go when it is his turn to step on the field. But how necessary do you think it is that Arizona lands Leviticus Sua, and who are maybe some others, some not necessarily players, but positions that you think you want to see them continue to explore, whether it is through high school recruiting or more likely the transfer portal? What are some other positions that you want to see them address? But maybe first start with your thoughts on Leviticus and how important is he to Arizona's plans, and how vital do you think it is that they land him, when it comes to January 20th?
I think it's essential. I think it's right up there with Arizona landing T-Mac in terms of need. I know T-Mac was the big 5-star recruit, highest rated recruit Arizona's ever landed, and that was important for the program. But when you look at how poor the linebacker position has been over the last several years at Arizona and what Leviticus can do on the football field, he's everything you want in a linebacker. More the traditional, I think of, Antonio Pierce than USC back in the day when they had those big linebackers that ran downhill like Clay Matthews and Brian Cushing type of linebacker. Then more so that than, the nuanced pass coverage linebacker. But, he's a highly talented player. I think Arizona if they get him, he has a bright future at Arizona. I think it's a must for the Wildcats, because then you go from kind of uneasy at your linebacker position to having Justin Flowe, to having Jacob Cowing, Jerry Roberts, and Leviticus. And then you have some guys behind there that are still trying to develop, but you're in a much better situation than you were just a year ago, and a hell of a lot better than 2 seasons ago. So I think it's part of the building process of Arizona and getting the program where it wants to be. And in terms of the transfer portal, again, you can add at linebacker. I don't think it hurts to add at that position for some depth. Offensive line and the safeties. I like the safety group a little bit more than some people with Isaiah Taylor and Dalton Johnson. I think those 2 can play, but behind there's a little shaky right now. So if you add some veteran piece that could just be a backup or contend for a starting role, I think that'd be a good add for the Wildcats.
I'd probably throw in cornerback in there as well. I think you could stand to add another cornerback, and it's potentially someone who could start and step on the field right away. But Jacob Cowing does not play linebacker. I think you meant Jacob Manu, but Jacob not big enough.
I meant linebacker. I meant Manu. My bad.
Not big enough to play linebacker, I don't think. But yeah, I mean, I think that there's a big portion of the offseason work in terms of addressing big needs has happened with the transfer portal. I do think there's going to be another wave. I would be shocked if there's not another wave of transfers that across the country that enter the portal before the window closes in mid-January. I think after the bowl games have a chance to kind of settle down, I think players will understand, okay, this is where I stand, and I'm going to try and figure out where I want to go. So I think there's going to be a wave of new transfers. There is a transfer visit window, January 4th or January 8th. I think you'll see Arizona host some players then. And And then we'll kind of see what happens from there. But I think I still think there's some work to be done. I think the heavy lifting is done at this point, but I do think that there's still some more work to be done for Arizona before they get to spring ball, potentially even after spring ball. Who knows? There's another transfer portal window opening May 1st. So we'll see how it all shakes out. But I think we touched on everything. Troy, anything else you want to add before we get out of here?
No, I think we got it all.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about a lot, so we appreciate you all listening, and we'll catch you guys next time.